Hello guys, so as promised I am going to be doing the vision level 1 concept. Yep, let's begin. There are a lot of situations in which you ward differently on level 1 depending on matchup, depending on your jungle, depending on the plan that your team wants to execute and stuff like that. So let's begin with the easiest and most common way to ward level 1. Let's imagine that we play a melee matchup and we play against ranged. So this is melee and this is ranged. So in every case, when you play melee against ranged, or in most cases, the ranged should be getting priority into the melee champion, and then that means if the ranged champion gets wave 1 priority, then he'll most likely get wave 2 priority and potentially crash you, or crash you on wave 3. In all those scenarios, either wave 2 crash or wave 3 crash, doesn't matter, you're gonna be stuck here under tower for a minute or a minute and a half, depending. So your first ward will be used at around 3 minutes. So in order to not be under this, not use our ward for like 1.5 minutes and not have used the ward until 3 minutes of the game, we want to ward before the lane starts, so we actually have the time to go deep and ward, because there's no wave that we're gonna lose, right? So the first way, first idea is to play melee against ranged and secure a ward in their jungle before the laning phase starts. And then here you have to decide which camp to ward, either raptors or the red, right? And then here it comes a bit tricky, but not really, because it's very simple. If the enemy has a jungler that would skip raptors, then you don't ward here. And then of course you're gonna ward on the red buff instead. And if they have a jungler that wants to do raptors, then the ward here is completely fine, right? The junglers that are not doing raptors can be Trundle, can be maybe Jarvan 4 if he decides that he's gonna go for another path, like let's say red into, I don't know, red into bot side into gank, or red into mid gank, you know, dependent. There are a lot of jugglers that can do certain pathings like that. Trundle Elise is a really good champ to give an example with, but you know, most of the times you're gonna be playing as a jungle that is gonna do raptors. So in most cases the sword is better, but if you play against Elise or Trundle or something like that, the sword here is better, because this way you see where he's starting. Of course, if you play against Trundle or Elise and he's not starting here, most likely he's starting in bot side on the blue. Or can be invading your buff, but you know, that's depending on a lot of factors, so we're not gonna be covering that. Then we have another situation, which would be if you wanna ward for cover. So let's say mid is playing heavy prio lane. So let's say enemy mid is playing Syndra. Oh my god, I'm sorry for my writing, by the way. Anyway, with the Syndra, yeah, I may play some melee champion to it. Let's say, I don't know, let's say Yone, okay? So we play Yone. So here, in this matchup, she'll be able to get prio whenever she wants. Usually she will slow push wave 1, 2, possibly 3, depending on if you hit or not, or if she sets it up properly. And then let's say your jungler is, I don't know, let's say your jungler is a very easy to invade jungler. That could be Karthus, that could be Evelyn, that could be, I don't know, there are a lot of champs that you can invade early on that are like scaling champs and they need to full clear. Maybe, I don't know, Nocturne can be tried to be invaded, but he's kind of strong, so that really depends. But you get the idea. If you have a very weak jungler early on, something like Evelyn, something like, maybe I'm not sure, but I think Talia also has a hard time clearing, so Talia can be varied as well. You get the idea. When you have a weak jungler early on, Karthus is also easy to punish early on if you have two people, like if you have a main advantage. In the 1v1 it's hard, but if you have someone with you, then it's really easy. In those cases, when you know that enemy jungle, let's say enemy jungle is, I don't know, Trundle. Yeah. Strong jungle that wants to fight. In those cases, you might want to be warding for cover of your jungle. So you can put a ward here. Or you can put a ward, I don't know, somewhere here, you know. So you see this entrance, for example. And you see this entrance. But this is a situation which you're most likely not gonna be in a lot, because those jungles that I listed are currently not played that much, so you won't be having this problem. But this is a scenario that I have to cover, because let's say vision here, you know, it's important, but not really insane information. I mean, it's always good to know where Trundle is, but if enemy has really heavy prio, let's say they have prio mid bot, and bot also, like bot gets push and mid gets push, then they can easily invade your jungle. So a cover ward here or here can be good, depending on where your jungler is gonna start. You wanna be warding the opposite, because they're gonna be invading on wave 3 or wave 4, depending, or maybe even wave 3 or 4. So if you start stop by wave 3 or 4, he'll be bot, so that's where you wanna ward, and vice versa, of course. You get the idea. So yeah, this is the other concept. Then we have the concept where you have the ganking jungler, you have a really strong jungle, and you're playing ranged. And then it's a bit tricky. So let's think about it. Okay, so we have the Syndra. Let's imagine we have the Syndra and Trundle this time, right? So we have Syndra, we have, just a second, we have the Trundle, right? And our bot is a lane we want to play for. Let's say we have a very strong bot lane that we can dive with. Let's say we have Prio bot, or let's say that we have a good setup for bot. So also gank is really good. So that's either like Prio. I'm sorry for my writing again. I'm gonna try to fix it a bit. Yeah, Prio, or we have setup. So with the setup, it's very easy to gank, because let's say we have a hook chat or whatever, and with Prio it's easy to dive. So maybe sometimes you have both, right? So in this case, it's better to ward, or not ward, but hover. Like if you have Syndra, most of the times you don't need to be warding early, because you're gonna get Prio and you can use your ward better. Of course, there are situations where you might want to ward, but I'm gonna cover this in the next concept that we're gonna talk about. But in this situation, you have, as I said, Trundle, Syndra, Prio or setup bot, and you wanna play for bot. So the Syndra, we're blue side, wants to sit here by 120. Okay, this way we make sure that the enemy, if he comes and wards the raptors, we see that, or we deny it. Okay, and the reason why we want to do that is because our jungle is going to pass from top to bot, right? And he will most likely want to go gank bot, because that's what we're going to play for. It's logical from the draft we have, right? And we want to make sure that this gank is successful, because, you know, we rely on it being successful, because that's our game plan. So we want to make sure everything in like our power, that we control this area, so they don't get a ward and spot him, and then maybe the gank fails because of that ward. And in this case, you have two possibilities with Syndra. I don't really want to be hovering, I mean warding here, to see if they're gonna go in like this. But let's say you have a champ that you can maybe get prio, you can maybe not get prio, or like you get slight prio, you don't get so much. Like let's say you play which lane would be good? I mean, let's say you play Orianna, you know. Orianna does not have that much push as Syndra early on because of the damage being lower, but you still get push. It's just a bit slower. So in those cases, you really want to be getting the prio, like being on lane fast. So you don't want to be losing time sitting here and stuff like that. Or let's say if you play a melee matchup, against melee matchup, in that case it's even better to be first, because melee against melee sometimes there is a matchup which like whoever hits first he gets the prio, and in those cases you really don't want to be covering until 120 here, because let's say enemy walks up like this and automatically he has prio and we don't want that. So in those cases you can put a ward here in this area, so you see if he walks like this to put a ward, you see him, like I'll put somewhere ward here, yeah, and then you see him if he walks. And then you're gonna like ping your jungle where the ward is, let's say here. So if he really wants to do that gank, he can do this, move like this, take this ward, you know, the vision is like this, but they don't see because he didn't go like that, and then he ganks bot, or he can insta gank bot, depends on the jungle. But usually that would be the pathing, and then he ganks bot, and then everything is good. So yeah, this is pretty much it. If you have solid prio, you just want to cover until 120, go to lane and get the push. If you play against melee melee against melee, most likely it's better to be on mid, so you make sure that you get it and the enemy does not like walk up a bit further, like let's say here, while you're coming here from this area, and he gets to hit your minions for free. So yeah, you get the idea for this one. And then we have one more concept, which is let's say we play Syndra again, right? We have prio and everything, we have good jungler or whatever, you know, but the enemy has ganking jungler, you know. Let's say they have Alice. It can be Alice, it can be Rek'Sai, it can be Trundle, you know, junglers that it's really important to see where they're starting from. In those situations, it's best if you go ahead and put a ward on the red buff. And the reason being is because a lot of junglers, let's say Alice and Trundle again, they don't do red. They don't do raptors. So the ward on the buff is way better because they're not gonna skip the buff, you know. They're 100% gonna be on the buff at 130. If they're not on this buff or on the ward you have, most likely he's here. So now you know that he starts bot and he's patting top. And in that case you're free, because you're safe, because you know that you have to cover this side for a little bit, cover it, and then at let's say 2 minutes, 2:30, it depends on the enemy jungle, you can switch sides again, and you're gonna be safe from the ganks. Also your teammates will be safe, but that really depends, you know. This is a bit of a broad concept, because you know enemy jungle can be ganking jungler, but let's say he can do this area, then look for gank like this, look for gank like this, you know. You have to be careful how you hover. So yeah, you have to be careful with that, because like let's say it's 2:30, 2:40, you have a ward here but he doesn't show up yet, you know, be careful with this area, you know, he can be there and you don't want to get ganked, so wait him to show up on the ward and then switch sides, pretty much. And yeah, I think this is pretty much mostly all of the concepts that we covered. We talked about melee against ranged, we talked about when we are ranged, we talked about against ganking junglers, we talked about when we have a ganking jungler and we want to allow him to do a certain play on the map without him being spotted. So pretty much this is the entire concept of the level 1 ward. It's a bit complicated to use in solo queue, sometimes you're not gonna be using those things. Usually the most common ward in solo queue is this one. But you know, it's good to be prepared for any situation, for any pretty much for any environment that you get put in. So yeah, I hope this is helpful for you guys. I'm going to be continuing to do those concepts, so make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can be updated when I upload stuff. And yeah, Thank you for watching this, and see you guys.